Hey everyone, how you doing today? Well, I got the hull work done on the carrier. That's the first part of the video, and then I want to talk about the challenge some more and show you some things and some discoveries and some information based on some comments and things like that. But on the carrier, the control area ended up looking like this. Now it changed to quite a bit from where I started on the last video. I got that done, and I looked at it a little later, and I'm like, I was doing kind of the same kind of bridge design as I was did with like the Persis carriers, plural, Persi, whatever those are, and I didn't. It didn't seem very fitting, so I changed it around. I bulked it up. It's actually sitting up a little bit higher than it was before. I did some other things that kind of meant to look a little bit more industrial, like the rest of the ship sort of does. A junky industrial post-apocalyptic kind of thing, at least. And this is what I came up with. So this is kind of what the bridge area is looking like now. It's a little bit bigger design than I probably originally had planned. I had some tricks here. I had this thruster that was over here, which is symmetrically placed to the one on the other side over there. That I had to like basically make this whole structure a void, so it kind of wraps around it along the sides there. But at the end of the day, I thought that chaos and that weirdness was fitting for what the rest of the ship is, and it's pretty weird. It's a weird ship. But I do like it. It's quite unique from most anything I built before, except for maybe the Skaar Crawler. Other people suggested that this kind of reminds them of something from Homeworld. I agree. I love those Homeworld ships. I looked at some pictures probably a year and a half ago. I actually own one of the Homeworld games too, and I thought that stuff was really cool. Just like this ship, I didn't really think that it would be very practical to ever do such a thing in reality, but I thought it looked really cool as in the sci-fi aspect of it. And I like the look so much that it probably subconsciously, when I finally decided to put the tracks on the ship, it was probably a little bit Homeworld inspired right there. But I did a little bit of that with the Skaar Crawler too, trying to simulated tracks. They don't obviously work in the game, but it's fun. It's fun. It creates a unique look. Is all I can really say. But other than that, yeah, this thing is it's doing pretty good. I got some more. I'm gonna have some more texture tweaks and little tweaks along the way on the body. But for the most part, the block work is actually pretty much done on the body now. And one thing I wanted to just cover before I went to the next part of the video here is, in comments it was suggested that maybe I should cut down these the lengths of these runways and make a big landing pad somewhere on it. And I'm thinking about doing that. I just kind of wanted to run it by everybody. So my idea right now would be to take this body line right here and kind of, well, in one way or another, kind of run it right across the deck here, and the runways here, so they're facing forward going that way, and then take the rear section and make it into a big landing pad. Now I could still put in some white lines and things and try to like split that landing pad up into little smaller areas, or have like a big area marked out for like a larger ship. But I was kind of thinking about doing that. The reason being is these runways are really, really long, and they can get kind of monotonous to look at. I got to this point putting these little lines on here, and I'm like, oh my God, it's got that much more to go yet. Holy smokes. So I'm like, yeah, maybe I should divide that up again. I had it kind of where I was going to divide it up, and then I backed away from that. Comment about the creases in the runway and stuff like that, and I'm like, yeah, in reality, in sensible reality, yeah, you wouldn't want to do that. In fact, I wouldn't want to do break it up into a landing pad back here either, because if you were flying a conventional aircraft, you'd want this runway to be, completely unobscured from either direction that you're flying in on. So if you had the runway start here, and you had a landing pad here, and you had a vessel parked here, yeah, if you were flying a conventional aircraft, you couldn't land on the runway. You'd have to fly over the vessel and then try to squash it down really fast, and that'd be just something you wouldn't want to do in reality. So, yeah, it's one of those things. It's like it's a thing between reality and visuals, and since most, I mean, in Imperium, every ship is VTOL. I mean, there is no need for a runway in this game for any reason at all. It's more of a cosmetic thing. You know, it's a big area. It could be just a bunch of individual landing pads and no runways at all. But I kind of wanted it to kind of have that carrier feel with the runways, and I did that with some past creations. And I kind of liked how that came out and how it looked in general appearances and things like that. So I don't know. It's a lot of debating going on there, but I just curious what you guys think. Should I divide that runway up and do a big landing pad back in this area? That would at least kind of break it up, cosmetically speaking, where maybe it's a little bit more interesting to look at. So, all right, test chassis and things. Start with, there was one comment and suggestions that said to get rid of the advanced shield and put in a sealed capacitor. And I was thinking to myself, I wonder what that does. So I tested it. So on this chassis, straight up, each one of these launchers on here reduces the shield capacity by 50. So with an advanced shield on here, it would provide 6,000 shield hit points. By swapping out the advanced shield for a regular shield and then putting in a single shield capacitor, rather than 5,800 shield with this would have had, it now has 9,300 shield. And with charging and everything and flying around with the 2 generators that it does have in it, it didn't cause any problems. So I call that a win-win. So that was some really good advice, actually. It's much better off going from 5,800 shield to 9,300 shield without any additional CPU cost. Now your shield's going to charge a little bit slower because of that one capacitor, but not by much. I think the trade-off is definitely worth it. It would allow you to stay in combat for a longer period of time, which could make all the difference in combat, potentially. So that's kind of the way I'm looking at it. Now, another thing I changed on here is I got rid of all turrets and I tried using bigger guns. So here we've got your 2 laser cannons, and these are probably any design I'm using, I'm probably going to use 2 laser cannons. They're 21,000 CPU a piece, which is cheaper than most turrets, and they're very effective against shields. So, and you also can manually fire them and aim at what you want to aim at. So I kind of like that approach. So, but these artillery cannons, these are pricey. These are 60,000 CPU apiece, so 120,000 CPU used in these 2 artillery cannons. It could be kind of a fun setup, a completely manual fire, where you take down the shield with your 2 laser cannons, you switch over to your 2 artillery and try to take down the ship, killing blow maybe, whatever means you want to. Not a bad thing, except it's got a new issue because of that. The CPU costs are so high on those artillery launchers that wrong menu, that there's not enough CPU left to add even 1 turret. And then I'm thinking about drones. I'm like, well, you've got literally nothing on this ship to deal with drones with. Best case scenario could maybe fly around and try to use one of these weapons to take out a drone, which is probably costly on your part, and you would have to manually target and fire on those drones. And you certainly won't want to be doing that while you're engaged in a capital ship at the same time, because you'd have to take your fire off the capital ship, which would be a big no-no. So that's kind of a problem, that this thing would be, if there's a bunch of drones flying in the area at the same time, that's going to suck, and you really can't do anything about it. Not with this setup in this design. So then I thought about it some more and tried something else over here. This is taking some of the elements from the past design, but reworking the weapons again. So it's borrowing 3 of the same ideas. So it's got the big thruster instead of the 6 small thrusters for forward thrust. I like that. That's kind of a win-win. It's got the 2 laser cannons. Again, they're pretty cheap on CPU and do great shield damage. So I like those. But this one, I found a different turret, and this is a Reforged Eden. It's a Colonist rocket turrets. Now these are pretty cheap CPU-wise, comparatively speaking to a regular rocket turret. They're about 1/3 the cost. They also do about 1/3 the damage. So I mean, yeah, the other ones are a lot harder hitting than these are. But literally, I've got 7 of these on here. There's 6 on the front, and there's 1 more right over here. And those 7 cost the same amount as 2 regular rocket turrets. So 7 versus 2. In this way, at least with this idea of thinking, there's more for the AI to shoot at. And I'm arranging these turrets in such a way that I'm kind of building a bit of like a defensive wall in front of where, you know, your important parts would be further back in the ship, out of it. But to make sure that these turrets, like if this one gets hit and it doesn't blow up the turret next to it on either side, I also had to use a better material. So I used hardened steel here that I believe is capable of preventing that explosion from damaging the something else over here on either side of it. But side effect to all that is adds a lot of weight. These turrets weigh the same as a regular rocket turret. They do 1/3 the damage. And then I had to use all the weight for all the supporting blocks here to make sure these turrets didn't chain react. And that's just a lot of weight added to the ship, basically. And that's another big problem, is you got so little thrust performance to deal with that adding a bunch of weight to the ship like that is probably not a good idea either. Beyond those turrets, it does have 1 artillery launcher too. Which again, a big chunk of change. Don't know if that's the best way to go. This essentially, you fly at the enemy. I'd probably just leave these running, firing all the time at the enemy ship, even when the shield's up. It does a little bit of shield damage, not much. These are going to do far more. So you take out the shield, and then you've got all these little rocket turrets that are also kind of serving as decoys and defense. And then you've got your 1 fixed artillery turret where you could target something on that enemy ship and try to go for a killing blow or something that would at least damage it good, before you might have to flee and recharge your shield and come back. As long as you can make progress each run and have enough ammo to sustain that fight, I believe you should be able to win the battle. But, a big unknown I've got on this one is, okay, let's take a look at the tooltip on these laser cannons a second here. So they can only be used in space, which is totally fine. High damage versus energy shields. Okay, so that's good. And it's assumed that these things are good shield killers. But what I don't really know, and it does say damage 650, how effective are these on the hull of the ship? 650 damage. It's not probably a lot. So I wouldn't say very effective, but what I'm getting at here is for the price of this 1 turret, and there's a problem in EGS. You cannot set up weapon groups. Like if I hop in the pilot seat here, I can either fire the laser turrets or I can fire the artillery. I cannot fire both at the same time, unfortunately. So my thinking was, for what this one cost, I could at least add 2 more of these, plus have additional CPU left over, and then you'd be able to fire 4 of these simultaneously, full time during the combat, versus shutting these off and going to this one just to shoot the one. Now these are a lot harder hitting, but I don't know. Would if you had like 4 laser turrets firing at the same time, would that produce enough block damage to kind of try to do what the artillery is doing? One advantage you would be able to take down the shield of the ship quite quick initially. So the shield won't be up long. All these little rocket launchers and stuff would be able to, start doing damage right away. And then you could keep targeting stuff with the laser turrets. it's just an idea, you know. It's an idea. I'm just kind of curious on how that would work out. Basically, at the end of the day, I'm trying to get as much firepower and as much shield, as much thrust as possible on this thing, and it's very frustrating at a basic CPU or a 400,000 CPU core, which it's challenging and it's for a challenge. So I mean, it certainly makes sense on a challenge aspect of it. So it's I don't know. I'm just trying things. I'm trying to just come up with something. Come up with something that could work out. And I'm trying different ideas. And this idea, I kind of like the idea of the more turrets, but on the same note, it adds a lot of weight to the ship, and I can't move the ship good enough. In fact, if we take a look at the specs on this one, well, right here on CPU, you can see I'm pushing it right to the edge. But it does have a detector on here too. So short of ammo storage, it technically has all the parts it would need. In here it does have fuel tanks and stuff like that too. So I'm not really worried about the CPU. But the motions on this thing, by adding all those turrets and even the blocks, and keep in mind I still don't have like a ship in here yet. It's already slowing down beyond max speed. Already doing it by the blocks that I added. And I'm looking at these numbers here, the strafing and the up and down at the back. And what I see here is you're not going to be able to avoid anything coming at you. You do not have the power, the strafing, anything to really avoid any incoming fire on you. It's pretty much it's all going to hit you. So it would be nice to have a little bit more thrust performance, but there's no way I could give it enough thrust performance to ever avoid any of this stuff, really. And that's kind of another problem. Another problem with this unusual class of ship to start with is the fact that although it's got a starter, like CPU kind of thing going on for it, it's not a starter. It's not a starter price. It's unlock level 25. It requires rare things. It's not something you can get into right away. In fact, by the time you were at this level and were able to afford this, you would easily be able to afford something better than this, probably, with more CPU that was more capable. But that's aside from the challenge. I wouldn't use this kind of creation in gameplay. If I was gonna play a survival game, I wouldn't do this. I'd probably go the traditional route of some type of starter CV and do some mining and eventually either soup that one up a lot or spawn in something else that was more combat oriented, that had enough firepower, had enough shield, had enough thrust power to actually do decent in combat. Where this is pushing it. Could this work? Yeah, and I think the intent was to get something like this so you could get improved cores and salvage these ships that you're attacking to kind of put you ahead. But the way I see it is it's costing you so much to get to that level that it would cost you almost nothing more to get to a much better level and have a much better success rate and have a more capable ship of doing something else besides this. Like anything I build here, it's not going to have any docking capabilities. It's not going to have any production capabilities. It's not going to have any farm capabilities. It's not going to have general utility functions. It's really not going to be good for anything but this. And if I try to make it good for other things, it would be too big and it wouldn't work either. So it'd just be too heavy and too big, and so I'm kind of at it's a rough build. So anyway, I just wanted to go over all these numbers, and I definitely wanted to relay that information about the shield. I thought that was really good information. I appreciate that comment there. You guys come up with good advice, and I'll look at it, and I'll basically give it a good check, and then tell everybody else about that. So keep in mind, you're kind of sharing it with everybody, and it's helping us all, because I am learning things on this build, so I appreciate the build and the challenge. It's probably I'd probably say the most difficult Anvil challenge that I can remember, since it's been going on for many years now. And it's kind of fun in a way, and I'm learning things. about it, and I'm spending more time looking at stats of weapons and things like that. But ultimately, testing is going to be a big thing too. So, I can come up with a lot of different theories and ideas of how I want to go about this, but does it actually work? That's a big unknown. I don't know yet. Theoretically, I think this design would work to take down an enemy ship. It's just, is it optimized? Not really. Is this idea the best? I don't know. Should I have the artillery? I don't know. There's a lot of things I just don't really know either. So I'll just have to keep on pressing forward with it, experimenting a little bit and seeing what takes place. And this is a funky design for me too, because it's a 2-block center. Because I wanted to do this idea, because I thought that was a good idea to do. But it's forcing me to build everything weird where there is no technical center point. And it really raises problems with it, because there's some parts that are 3 blocks wide, some blocks that are 2 blocks wide, or parts and things like that. And it's like, you can't have a center point when you have a 2-block middle. Well, you can have a double block center, but which works for the thruster, but obviously I could not symmetrically place the shield in it. It's impossible. So just a lot of weird things like that. Kind of throws you off base a little bit. If I were to continue with what's here, it would have to be reworked a lot. The idea was I was going to have a cockpit off to one side over here, and then on the other side it would have that 7th rocket launcher over here that would try to shape the block work so it kind of looked symmetrical to the other side, so it wouldn't stick out too bad. And then I even had to offset, there's no center point on the ship here, so even this artillery cannon is 1 block either side of center. That always bugs me. That bugs me. I mean, but there's just, that's why the idea of, could I run more laser cannons? Would that be a good idea or not? And then I could at least run 2 and keep it kind of symmetrical there, and fire them all at the same time throughout the whole fight. That's just another one of those questions. Anyway, that's all I wanted to cover today. I just mainly wanted to show the carrier and talk a bunch about this. See what you think, and relay that information about the really good advice about the shield. Appreciate that. It's going to improve, hopefully, everybody's designs. It's an easy thing to do. Even if you have a ship already built, it's an easy thing to do if you didn't know it, and get yourself some more shield for free, pretty much. So anyway, y'all have yourself a great day. I'll talk to you later.